In this lesson, we're continuing to look at proportions in chemical bonds. Last time we studied sodium chloride, which we found broke down into sodium and chlorine in a mass ratio of 0.65 and an atom ratio of 1:1. Today, let's look at a different one, magnesium chloride. In this salt, the mass ratio of magnesium to chlorine is always 24 grams to 70 grams. Now let's look at what we know about each of these elements. Magnesium has a relative atomic mass of 24, meaning that it weighs 24 times as much as hydrogen, while chlorine, as we know, has a relative atomic mass of 35. So this means that 1 mole of magnesium weighs 24 grams, while 1 mole of chlorine weighs 35 grams. So if we had a compound with a mass ratio of 24 grams of magnesium to 35 grams of chlorine, that would mean that there are the same number of atoms of magnesium as there are chlorine, and they would be combining in an atom ratio of 1:1. But the actual compound, magnesium chloride, combines in a mass ratio of 24 grams of magnesium to 70 grams of chlorine. The 24 grams in the numerator corresponds to 1 mole of magnesium, but the 70 grams of chlorine is twice the relative atomic mass of chlorine. Therefore, it's equal to 2 moles of chlorine. So for every 1 atom of magnesium, we have 2 atoms of chlorine bonding to it. Or said another way, in magnesium chloride, for every 1 unit of magnesium, there are 2 units of chlorine. Let's look at a chemistry problem that this could help us solve. If a sample of magnesium chloride has 72 grams of magnesium, how many grams of chlorine does it have? Well, we know that the mass ratio of magnesium to chlorine is always 24 grams to 70 grams. And we've been told that we have 72 grams of magnesium. How many grams of chlorine does that mean? Well, once we set up this proportion, we can notice that 72 is 3 times 24. So x has to be 3 times 70. So x equals 210 grams of chlorine. Now let's look at what this tells us. We have 72 grams of magnesium, and we know that there are 24 grams of magnesium per mole. If we divide this, we determine that we have 3 moles of magnesium. We also have figured out that we have 210 grams of chlorine, and we know that there are 35 grams of chlorine per mole. So if we divide this, we determine that we have 6 moles of chlorine. Sure enough, we have twice as many chlorine atoms as magnesium atoms, which corresponds to our constant ratio that in magnesium chloride, for every 1 unit of magnesium, there are 2 units of chlorine. So ratios aren't always going to be 1:1 or even 1:2. Chemicals come together in all sorts of different ratios. But the cool thing is the more we study it, the more predictable those ratios become. In our next lesson, we're going to use the periodic table to predict in what ratios different elements combine.